Let's do it. Okay, so I am going to share my journey now when I work on The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Okay, so one thing I want to start off by saying is that I am always so in awe of how life works. And I see this a lot in my life. So, how something like a theme is kind of woven in your life throughout the years, sometimes really screaming at you, sometimes you might even miss it, right? But something always comes back in your life at various different times for whatever reason. I think that is so cool. And obviously, there's so much meaning in that, right? And so, the artist way, I did this like 20 years ago, 21 years ago, right? So, my oldest son, Zachary, would have been like, say, 5, 6 ish. And then my middle son, Riley, would have been maybe a year and a half, 2 ish. And my little guy wasn't born yet, first time around. But I did it, right? I remember a little bit of it, not much, but I remember being part of it. And then again, I did it, about, if he's now 19, my youngest, so about like 15 years ago, maybe 13, 14 years ago, I did it again, a second time. This time when it came around, it was because my son's aunt was doing it and had brought it to me, but I had already done it, and it just kind of re-inspired me to do it. The point is, okay, this book is basically written to try to reconnect with your creativity inside. It's for people who have like the writer's block, right? To recover your creativity, I think is the words that she actually uses. And which is really interesting to me that even, 20 odd years ago, I'm seeking out creativity, not knowing why back then, 100% not knowing why. This time around, I'm actually trying to find my creativity, rediscover it, reclaim it, right? Because I know that is my authentic self. That's one thing I've learned over the last year and a bit is creativity, and that's within, in that stillness. And I'll talk about that in a second as well. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But anyway, I find it really interesting that here I am, third time now doing this book. But this time around, it's a whole new lens. The last 2 times I did it, I guarantee I wasn't in a very good headspace, right? This time around, I feel like I'm in a really good place. And I also have a lot of different experiences and different perceptions and on all of this, and it's really going to add to my takeaway and my experience of doing this book. Now, there are a few things I'm kind of changing in this book just to fit my own pathway and my growth. I know, changing it isn't really helping me with my growth because then I'm actually stopping from learning a different perspective or new, but we're not going to go there. This is what I'm doing. So she often refers to the book as in God. And she even does the disclaimer that it's not about God, right? It's about a higher power. But so every time she refers to God, I call it divine. Divine, right, is the universe. And we can even break it down if you're a god and a goddess, right? So she says God, I say divine, which is good. She makes a lot of references to things that now, knowing what I know about brain science, kind of confused me a little bit. And I'll also talk about that in a couple seconds. So let's jump into, this is just like the introduction, getting ready for week 1. You ready? Okay. So she talks about spiritual electricity. Interesting, right? And she says there's some basic principles we need to keep in mind. So I'm just going to read the principles to you. The first one, creativity is the natural order of life. Life is energy, pure creative energy. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And that goes along with what, say, Deepak says, right? And the other meditation expert people. They all talk about that, which is one of the reasons why I've been trying to figure out my own creativity. I'm not an artist. I can't draw. I'm really good with the written word. I can write. But I can't draw or create things from my hand, think something in my head, and then make it happen. Create that. I can make things happen. But I mean, like, have a picture in my head and then try to paint that picture. I'm not able to do that. I struggle with that. And so I was trying to figure out how I can get to my creativity, which is where the artist way came in, right? Anyway, so makes sense. We're all creative energy. Second thing, There is an underlying, indwelling creative force kind of infusing all of us together, all life, including ourselves, right? And this creative life energy flows freely throughout the universe. When we open ourselves to our creativity, we open ourselves to the Creator's creativity within us and our lives. So again, if we get to that place of stillness, then we've reached our authentic self and the knowledge, right? And the creativity in her language. 4, we are ourselves creations, and we in turn are meant to continue to create by being creative ourselves. That one really hit home for me, but I put it in my language as more like an abundance, and that we're all energy, and that you need to give in order to receive. We need to support and build up each other in order for us to be supported and built up. It's like that never-ending cycle, right? We need one for the other, can't do without the other. 5, creativity is the divine's gift to us. Using our creativity is our gift back to the divine. And that goes again with the whole talk about finding your purpose, finding your talents, and then using your talents and giving it back to everybody, right? Which is why I'm doing this whole thing, because I really feel that this whole gift of my awareness of self-care and the importance of this journey to your authentic self, I believe so strongly in it, and I believe so much value in it that I need to share it with everybody, and I think that's one of my talents. The refusal to be creative is self-will and is counter to our true nature. I think that makes sense as well, right? Principle 7. When we open ourselves to exploring our creativity, we open ourselves to the divine. Again, when I think of creativity, I kind of go with that stillness when you do the meditative state and you get to that calm, that quiet, that peace, that just pure potential. So that makes sense to me. 8. As we open our creative channel to the Creator, many gentle but powerful changes are to be expected. That is so true. And then when I read that principle, I actually thought of gratitude, right? When you start to have gratitude for the little things, so much comes to you. It's like incredible, just the abundance that you get of joy and life. I can't explain it. We'll talk more about that. I don't want to get too far off on my ramblings. 9. It is safe to open ourselves up to greater and greater creativity. I think that one's really good. Fear, and fear comes up a lot. Fear basically stops us from being our authentic self. 10. Our creative dreams and yearnings come from a divine source. As we move towards our dreams, we move towards our authentic self. That's my word. But that makes sense, right? Think about it. And we manifest everything that we have. And we have that control because it is an unlimited source of energy. We come from there. So why couldn't we tap in and use it? I do really like how she said this. I don't know how it ties in right now, but it popped in my head, so I wrote it down how she said it. Stop telling yourself you are waiting until you make more money to do something you really love. Right? And I've actually kind of started doing that because I've been working on my relationship with finances. It's a whole thing. And that's something that I am kind of coming to terms with, right? About my relationship with money and my views on it. And that's actually holding me back from abundance and prosperity. And so I liked how she said, stop telling yourself you're waiting for this. And it kind of, you heard the story about, we're waiting to have children, we're waiting until we buy a house, we're waiting until we're studying our career, we're waiting whatever, right? You're going to wait because it's never going to really be, because there's always going to be something that you're waiting for. It also has to do with that, little story about the woman who died. I know there's a lot of them, but I remember hearing a story when I was in my early 20s. I was working at Lordco, actually. I can't remember who told me this, but someone had told me about this woman who had this beautiful dress, and she was waiting for this dress, a really special occasion, so she could wear it. And she hung it up, and she was waiting. And the old woman died before she wore the dress because that special ceremony never happened. The wedding of her daughter wasn't special enough, right? The graduation of whatever wasn't special enough. It never happened. And then her daughter buried her in it. Ugh, right? It also has to go with the thing about my perfume. When I was really young, I was actually working in a care facility, and there was a lady there who used to wear perfume. And she was an older lady, and she wore it every day. And I had made mention to her one day about wearing the perfume, like in the home. You're not going anywhere today, or however I worded it. And she just looked at me like, well, why wouldn't I wear it every day? I don't need a special occasion. That was like mind-blowing for me. What? Wait? I can wear it every day? I thought it was a special occasion thing. Really. I've been wearing the same perfume now since I was 18 years old. It is my trademark. Red Door. Just so you know. Throw a plug out there for it. Anyway. So, whole point, those are the principles. And basically, what we're taking away from that is that it makes sense. I don't know how else to say it. Let's move along. So now she gives us a real heads up. She gives us a warning about 2 tools that we are going to have to commit to using during this 12-week program. First of all, morning pages. That sounded kind of cool, right? Morning pages. Every morning you wake up and you just write, and you write whatever you need to write and just let it all out. And it doesn't matter what it is. You're just writing every morning when you wake up. 3 pages. That is when I went, oh my goodness, 3 pages. What am I doing? How am I going to do this? See, do you see how that happened? Right away. The committee of assholes, right in there. Wait a minute. No, we don't want you doing something that's going to be good for you, so we're going to try to stop you from doing it. You can't do that. You don't have time for that. How are you ever going to pull that off? You have all this other stuff you're going to do. Okay, so side note, my morning routines. What I'm doing now, every morning, I do my crystal work. So I take crystals for the day. I do intentions. I'm very purposeful with them. I spend time with them. I do a meditation. I then write out 3 things I'm grateful for. I'm doing the Deepak 21 Days of Abundance Challenge. So every day I write out the mantra for that day. And then I've also, thank you, Mel Robbins, I'm doing my 5 things I want every day. So then I'm writing 5 things I want. So now in the mornings, I'm doing a gratitude. I'm doing reflection, I'm doing what I want, and I'm doing intention and purpose. And now I'm going to write 3 pages of what? Anything? Now, remember, she wrote this book for artists to try to reclaim or recover their creativity that they may have lost or feel blocked. I'm kind of using this with a little bit of a different purpose. I'm using this to connect to my inner child. Where did that come from? I know, right? But it comes from when she starts talking about, she's talking about your artistic brain and your logical brain. So now I'm going to kind of just jump in here for a real second and talk brain science in my other life. I work with caregivers who work with kids who've experienced some really hard, bad things, scary things. And a lot of hard things, these hardships, negatives, adverse child experiences, we call them ACEs, can interfere with brain development, right? And so brain development happens from the bottom up. And so the bottom brainstem, that is the first to develop. That is our survival brain, as we call it, right? Basically, our number 1 job right in the brainstem is to keep us alive, our autonomic nervous system. Our second one is our midbrain. That's our limbic system, and that is our emotional relational brain. And then the very top is our logical brain, our cortex, prefrontal cortex, our thinking brain, okay? And so the brain develops from the bottom up. It also develops inside out, of course, and we do have our left and our right hemispheres. We have our left and our right brain, right? So she talks about the logical brain and how the logical brain actually is part of our survival brain. Do you see where I kind of went, whoa, wait a minute, that's not what I know. But I'm going to reframe it and kind of link it to how she explains it, but in my world, right? So basically, she's saying that the logical brain is the left hemisphere. And we know the left hemisphere is like, your logical brain. And then your artist brain is what she calls it, right? That's your right side of your brain, your right hemisphere. And that's like our artistic side, or, how we can like emotions and be artistic and that kind of stuff. So I'm not using her language of survival brain. She's just trying to say that her version of a logical brain, you know, we get in that rut. And basically we're just doing things to keep ourselves alive, get through the day. It's that whole reasoning, processing. She's not taking into consideration people who may have developmental trauma and their brains don't develop that way. So I had a little bit of problem with that, but now that I've let that go and just kind of realized that your artist brain is your child, because she talks about going on an artist date, and I think that's making a date with your child, your inner child, right? But we'll talk about that in a minute. So one thing I really like what she says about writing 3 pages every morning and just let it write. And even if you have to start off by saying, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. And I actually remember doing that years ago. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. This sucks. I fucking hate this. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't know what to write. Okay? I actually remember doing that. But I'm already doing so much in the morning. So then I was wondering, well, why can't I add that to my 3 pages? Right? I'll do my gratitude in there. I'll do the 5 things I want. And then the free flow of just whatever needs to come out, let it come out. And that way I'm not adding this whole thing. Because I don't think self-care is supposed to make it overwhelming, exhausting, and not wanting to do. Because you want pleasure out of it, right? That's the whole thing about self-care. Self-care is experiencing in the moment and the joy. And if you're doing something you don't want to do, I don't think that's self-care. So I just given myself permission to do those 3 pages, but I'm going to add the stuff that I normally do in the morning to those 3 pages. And then we'll just let it see how it goes from there. I think that's basically all we're going to do for that. So we're okay with that. But she does bring up the censor and to be aware of the censor. And I really like how she brought him up. She originally brought the censor up as the serpent from the Garden of Eden. Really, right? But then she kind of saved herself and also linked it to maybe being the shark from Jaws. But basically the censor, as I see it, is the committee of assholes. And every time there is a, you can't do this, you're stupid, are you crazy? What have you gotten yourself into? Seriously? You just shared that to everybody? Those little naysayers, that's who she calls the censors. And they're basically the ones that are trying to stop you from achieving your goal of your authentic self. That's the way I see it, right? The naysayers, the committee of assholes, the censor, the serpent, they all are off of fear. Because fear stops us from discovering who we are, stops us from living life, stops us from having what we're worthy of. Anyway, so I like how she did bring that up and how to just work through that. And I also really liked how she said that basically why we're writing to get to the other side. That I really liked. That made me think about, right. Okay. So we're writing, getting all of those negative things out of our head first thing in the morning, gone. Because once they're done and they had their say, they feel heard, whatever it may be, right? Then we can get to that stillness and quiet inside of us. That is what I am really thinking about and liking about that. So that's how I'm working it in my head. Okay. She says to do this every morning, no matter what. Just keep doing it. And it doesn't matter what you write, and don't be looking at it afterwards. Okay. The next thing she wants us to do is take ourselves out on an artistic date. An artist date. That's what she says. This is where I really feel the artist that she speaks to as being the inner child. And that's how I'm going to work it for my self-care journey to my authentic self. Is that it's my inner child. And that was something I did try last year too, to play. I really struggle with play. I don't know how. I try. Like color, that's what I remember doing as a kid. Like, I don't know. So I did try to play, and I want to bring play back into my life because it's so powerful. And I tell that to the caregivers all the time. The power of play and being curious. Curious was something that I really did take last year, and I'm going to continue to do it this year. So anyway, you have to make a commitment to go on a date with yourself, with nobody else. And I'm going to make this commitment once a week to play with my inner child. And whether that's going to the park, to the river, to wherever it may be, splashing in puddles, rolling down the hill, whatever it may look like, I'm going to make a commitment to play with my inner self. So I'm good with that. Or my inner child, pardon me. Okay, So then what does she say? She basically says that writing 3 morning pages is going to help to unblock the artist in us and recover the creativity in us, which I think is going to help nurture our inner child and help us get to that stillness. See how I did that? Okay. And I'm going to do this. Okay, so what else do we have here? Oh, in my notes, I started writing about connect to your inner child. And that's why I have bubble wrap and smelly cotton balls at self-care workshops, more than sensory items. What I was trying to do is, the popping of the packages, the pop, 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 pop. How do you love that, right? I've been to self-care workshops where I've actually put all that out for people to pop, and you should see all the people and the smile on their face when they're popping it. It's so cute. That is the inner child, and that's what we need to bring out more. We want those feelings of playfulness when we were little, because that's what gets us to our authentic self. And then she talks about, maybe resistance and be aware of how that commitment to that date, your artist date or your inner child date, how that could get sidetracked and rerouted, put aside because something else comes up or someone else comes along or whatever it may be. So just to be really aware of that. And something too that I highlighted, 5 minutes dancing barefoot on the ground. That is something I'm going to do. Maybe I'll film it. You never know. What else do we have here? So yeah, that's basically where I'm at. So at the end of it all, I had to do a contract. So I will read the contract to you. I, Catherine, understand that I am undertaking an intensive guided encounter with my own creativity. I commit myself to the 12-week duration of this course. And I, Catherine, commit to weekly readings, daily morning pages, a weekly artist date, and fulfillment of each of the week's tasks. But I'm going to do a date with my inner child. And I, Catherine, further understand that the course will raise issues and emotions for me to deal with. Yeah. I wish I would have known that when I started my self-care journey to my authentic self, like last year. I'd have to work on all of the emotion stuff, but we'll talk about that later. And I, Catherine, commit myself to excellent self-care. Got that covered. Adequate sleep. Do you know that since I've been doing my self-care practice to my authentic self, I have not been on... I wonder if that paused. We'll find out. I have not been on sleeping pills. Seriously. Pretty cool, hey? Diet, exercise, and of course, pampering myself for the duration of this course. And that is a given. Sincerely, Catherine, January 30th, 2023. And as she says here, art is the imagination at play. In the field of time, let yourself play. And that is what I shall do.